Hello, and welcome to North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we talk about the current edition of the North Coast Journal. My name is Matt Knight, and I am hosting this week. Dave Frank is off. I'm joined today by North Coast Journal news editor Thad Greenson and North Coast Journal arts and features editor Jennifer Fomiko Cahill. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
Doing good. Getting ready for the holidays. Not sure I'm ready, but it's coming whether I'm ready or not.
The rush is on.
That's right. So we got a lot of interesting stuff today, but I think we're going to start off with Jennifer and the new latest 2021 flash fiction. First of all, I think it behoove you to explain what flash fiction is to the uninitiated.
Okay, so flash fiction, it's a murky definition. A short story, short, long, Bonjour Tristesse is like a couple hundred pages, and yet it's a novel, right? But short fiction got shorter and went into flash fiction, which is something you can read in just a minute or two. Sometimes people go up to 500 words and still call it flash fiction. Sometimes people keep it down way, way shorter, like 99 words, which is what we do for our 99-word flash fiction contest every year. Why 99? Why not the full 100? Because we're a little mean. We take that last one from you. But it's amazing. And this year's cover, it hints at the winning story. And you'll see Jackie Langland's beautiful illustrations throughout, but on the cover especially, a plate of oysters Rockefeller, which is a key element in the winning story. But every year, we get together with our judges. I can't even remember what year exactly it started, but we have our recent crop of judges have been back several times. I don't want to say how many times because I don't want to remind them of how long it's been that they've been reading. Every time they read somewhere between, 120, sometimes closer to 200 stories. And they are all 99 words, so it's not a terrible labor. And these are all kind of book junkies anyway, so I figure they're going to be reading. But they generously give of their time and make brutal, cold-hearted judgments in order to determine a winner. And this year we have Dave Holfer, who you may remember from our recent discussion of going around Mount
Tamalpais.
Yes, Tamalpais. Dang. Anyway, he's also the first poet laureate of the city of Eureka and a professor emeritus from College of the Redwoods. And he's got books of poetry and he does all kinds of writing and teaching writing and whatnot. We have Joanne Bauer. She formerly of the Children's Library. She was the Children's Librarian at the Humboldt County Libraries, and she is a wealth of knowledge on all kinds of literature, but especially children's. And then two ladies who have honestly probably been more intimately connected than anybody else with at least my reading habits. Nancy Short, formerly the co-owner of Booklegger, and Jen McFadden, who is the current owner of Booklegger. They owned it together for, I don't know, ever. And then Nancy just retired, so she has even more time for me to bug her with stuff like this. And they read, I want to say it was about 140, somewhere between 140 and 150 entries. We had more entries than that, but some of them went over count and had to be disqualified. Looks down her glasses at you. But it's tricky. I know you get caught up. I don't blame people, but they're always really varied. There are a couple of things that I could put on a bingo card and hit almost every year. Story in which the narrator turns out to be a dog. A lot of murder. maybe more murder than I feel comfortable with usually, but a little less murder this year than previous year. There's always some aliens, and there's usually a love story. And I don't know, I feel like we had a lot of poems that touched on absence, loss, and grief this year, which is not shocking. We had a few entries that included the pandemic, but mostly they were just kind of about small moments in people's lives that were both really specific and really universal in some ways, very relatable things. At least that's what we found in our crop of finalists and our winner.
Yeah, I found it really enjoyable. I enjoyed all of the stories. And I hasten to add that there will be an audio version of these stories available.
That's right. If you feel like you want to enjoy these while washing dishes, I strongly recommend you log on to northcoastjournal.com or to the Access Humboldt website, or will it be on the radio station website?
It will also be on KZZH, yes.
All right. And we are going to have me reading, and also, please tell me the gentleman's full name.
Paul Bersu.
Right on. Paul Bersu is going to read.
Legendary Eureka High School civics teacher, now retired.
And fantastic voice actor as far as I'm concerned. We should do radio dramas.
Yeah, host of Community Voices.
See, you can hear his dulcet tones at any time. So this year's winner was by Christy Patterson, and it is, I'm just going to read it to you quickly because it's only 99 words. It's by Christy Patterson, and it's titled, "This is the Story of How 1979 Was a Rough Year. I lost 2 grandparents, one to suicide, one to cirrhosis. We spent Christmas at the Eureka Inn instead of at home. My parents could not dissuade me from ordering oysters Rockefeller. I took a horrified bite of green goo. How is it? My eyes welled up. Great. My dad took a taste. That's just awful. I burst into tears. I know. The whole table exploded in the laughter of the grieving. This is the story of how my dad and I each ate half a plate of turkey dinner and how my family survived." In fact, Jen McFadden, Dave Holfer, and I all chose this story among our top 5. And I think the reason, other than the, it's a little nostalgic thinking of dinner at the Eureka Inn, it's Christmas time now, but also it kind of is that universal experience of heartbreak, sadness, whether it's because you've lost someone or whatever disappointment, whatever heartbreak you've just experienced. At some point, you break and you come back to yourself. And at some point, break in a good way. Grief cannot hold you completely all the time forever. At some point, something will make you laugh. Something will make you burst that bubble of sadness and feel human again. And this family gets to kind of experience it together in this goofy moment of, a kid who orders something that obviously is not going to work out, right? you know your kid, and when they're ordering something that is not going to work out. And, it's just kind of lovely and universal in that way, but also really specific to these characters and really specific to our moment. We are all kind of in this moment of national grief. We've lost 800,000 people to COVID-19, and it's hard to know, when are we done grieving? What stage are we in when people keep dying? It is a difficult place, and occasionally, we find ourselves enjoying ourselves despite it, or maybe because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, anybody who's ever broken into the giggles at a wake or a funeral, is that just me? There's that.
You and Mary Tyler Moore.
Yes, there's always a moment where somebody's baby gurgles or something happens, and we come back to ourselves a little bit. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of great stories. There are aliens. It gets a little murdery. There are some beautiful stories that One of our judges mentioned, they're never going to look at beach glass again the same way after reading one of these. There is a story with, I'm not going to give it away, but a shotgun and a potato.
A strong one.
Yeah, a shotgun and a potato. What could go wrong? There are some wonderful stories that are really mysterious, where we're sort of piecing together what happened. There are some beautiful kind of little, not exactly vignettes, but details and things that kind of drew us in. There's one about levitation, of all things. There's one about somebody who has just transitioned, going to see their family for the first time at the holidays. And there is, I'm sorry, but a story about a little fawn that loses its mother. I'm fine. I just had a very spicy burrito before this. I'm okay.
Well, sounds like there's a lot to recommend at the Flash Fiction this year.
We used to do this for sort of Thanksgiving, but we started running it at sort of the Christmas, New Year issue break, because we've got time to relax, and it's just sort of a pleasure to sit and read, and either read them one at a time, a couple at a time, or all in one go, but absolutely enjoy it. And if you see people in the community that are featured in here or out and about in your day, tell them congratulations, because they really did great work.
Terrific. Well, I'll look forward to checking that out, and I'm sure everybody else will as well. So Thad, let's turn to you, and you're working on a couple of stories, or have been working on a couple of stories. Why don't you tell us, I think the first one is the Humboldt County attorney's story. Why don't we talk about that one first?
Yeah, this goes back. We've been reporting on the story for years, and this seems to be kind of the culmination of it. But there was a very high-profile right-to-die case in Humboldt County featuring Dick Magny and his wife Judy. And regular readers and listeners might recall that the Judy Magny, after Dick Magny passed away, brought a civil lawsuit against the county of Humboldt that was settled for $1 million, basically arguing that the county had inappropriately tried to wrestle Dick Magny's end-of-life decisions and power of attorney away from the family as in his final weeks and months on living. And so this was back in 2015 that Dick Magny passed away, and kind of, as I said, in the final throes of his life, the Adult Protective Services petitioned to kind of wrestle power of attorney and care away from he and his wife against his advance directive and against his kind of expressed wishes. And in the aftermath of this case, the California State Bar, the agency that licensed attorneys in California, filed really serious charges against two county councils, one deputy county council currently, Natalie Duke, and then the recently retired former assistant county council, Blair Angus, and alleged that they had really misled the court during these proceedings with the Magnys and had willfully withheld information. And so this went through a state bar trial recently, and state bar trials, it's not a criminal trial, it's not a civil trial where somebody's suing. It's a licensing procedure. So basically, the state bar was saying that these attorneys' license should be suspended, and went through trial. And then just last week, a California State Bar judge issued her ruling and really thoroughly exonerated Miss Angus and Miss Duke, saying that this was a really complicated situation and there were all kinds of exigent circumstances, and they, in good faith, believed that they were trying to do right and trying to step in to save Dick Magny from a potentially dangerous situation. And there were some legitimate questions about whether he had, mental capacity to make his own medical decisions and whether his wife had his best interests at heart. And, the judge also makes clear that they were kind of operating on an incomplete record, and they were relying on an Adult Protective Services public health nurse to provide them with information, and that public health nurse did so very selectively and actively withheld some information from them. And so the state bar judge, while exonerating them and saying, they did everything in their power to do right, also very much makes clear that that's she's not saying the same thing about the county of Humboldt in its handling of the case. That Adult Protective Services, clearly did some real harm to the Magnies and handled the case inappropriately. But that's not the attorney's fault. That's basically the gist.
I see. Well, yeah, very complicated and long story, and well worth checking out. And then the other story, of course, and it's been a while really since we've had COVID in this show, but it's with Omicron and other Delta, it's sort of rearing its ugly head again. So, but we've got an outbreak at the county jail. Is that what the it is?
Yeah. So over the past week or so, we've been reporting on kind of this growing outbreak in the Humboldt County Jail, and it's now spread to I believe 31 inmates and 6 correctional officers at last we checked. It has been isolated to a single housing unit in the jail, and so the jail staff are feeling good that it has not spread to other arms of the jail, and are trying to be really watchful and making sure it doesn't. But pretty scary situation. I mean, in jails and prisons across the nation, we've seen COVID have just really disastrous effects, really spreading really quickly and then just having really poor health outcomes. As far as we know at this point, no inmates have been hospitalized. Everybody is getting medical care in an isolated wing of the jail. They initially were moving folks to their medical unit, but kind of became too many and exceeded the capacity of the medical unit. So they repurposed another housing unit as kind of a triage medical unit, and are caring for folks there. And they're hopeful that they've kind of gotten a handle on it, and it'll start tamping down. But it's in a dormitory style housing unit where everybody is sharing meals together and also sleeping a handful of feet apart. It's once COVID gets into a facility like that, it's just really hard to limit its spread.
Now, do you know what the vaccination status is of the inmate population, and whether they are vaccinated, whether they have access to vaccinations, or exactly how that works?
Yeah, so according to jail staff, all inmates are offered vaccination, both at the time they're admitted to the jail, if they're not already vaccinated, and then also they can request it at any time. They don't track the data on what percentage of jail inmates are vaccinated, so we don't know exactly. What we do know is inmates are all tested when they're and kept in quarantine when they're first admitted to the jail before they're moved to kind of communal housing units. And that's how the jail has so far, been pretty successful in preventing an outbreak like this. What it appears happened in this case is that a correctional officer caught COVID and brought that into the facility. The 6 correctional officers who all tested positive for the virus did so before the first inmate. So it's a pretty good indication that that's how this worked its way into the facility. And what we've been told is that about 50% of the county's correctional officers are fully vaccinated. So that's, a lower rate than the general population. And, as we point out in the story or have in our reporting, the county of Humboldt the Board of Supervisors did consider instituting a vaccine mandate for county employees, I think back in October, and voted against it, opting for weekly testing instead. And while they had their reasons for that decision, this is, an indication of some of the cost of that decision, I would say.
Now, some jails throughout the country have opted for early release to try to mitigate some of the effects of COVID spread. Is there any talk of that sort of thing for the Humboldt County Jail?
So we haven't heard any talk of it in relation to this outbreak. Early on in the pandemic, I don't know if folks might remember, the jail really changed its booking criteria and what offenses it was going to hold people on, and that has loosened up as the pandemic has gone on. And I think as we've seen with lots of public health restrictions, that as vaccines have become available, people have become more lenient about those mitigation measures, and the jail is the same. And so now they're much back to similar booking criteria as they had pre-pandemic.
I see.
And I haven't heard any talk of them changing that at this point.
Gotcha. Well, we'll keep an eye on this one as well, too.
Yeah, and since you mentioned it, just the quick Omicron, I can never say it right, but a quick update on that front is we've yet to have a confirmed case in Humboldt County. I think that it's a fairly safe bet that it's here, honestly, just with how pervasive it is in the rest of the country and the state. Those samples, are only found, the variant of a sample is only identified through kind of genomic sequencing, and it's kind of a cumbersome process that isn't currently being done locally. So public health is sending certain samples out to a state lab that then does that process. And so far, none of those have come back positive for Omicron, but it's only a matter of time, honestly. And I'd also say with some of our other measures as far as case rates and test positivity rates, which continue to be just much higher than the state average and even the national averages, I think that there's good reason to be a little bit fearful of what happens when Omicron does show up here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for following that story for us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
So, Jennifer, in a little less than 5 minutes we have left, Ponche.
Ponche. Yay, Ponche. Yeah, I'm sorry to make such a rough transition from very, very worrying variants to delicious Mexican warm beverages for the holidays. But again, this is...
the variant's coming regardless, so might as well drink up.
True. That's true. Who needs a drink? In fact, Andrea Juarez, who is, she actually teaches journalism at Humboldt State University and is the advisor for El Leñador. She does wonderful work over there. She's also a very wonderful food writer and wonderful cook. How many years ago was it she did the Coquito, Thad?
3 years ago, I want to say it was pre-pandemic, so 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, she did a great, that's right, because we had the Christmas party. So she did a great story on Coquito, which is a Puerto Rican coconut holiday drink, and it's delightful. And she brought us some, and it's so good. And this year she is writing about Ponche, which is a very fruity thing. If you are a person who is very excited about the hot cider, if the hot cider is the best part of picking out a Christmas tree for you, this is the drink for you, because it's next level. It has the cinnamon, it has the cloves, it has the oranges, and it has the apple-like tejocotes, which is, am I saying that right? Thad, help me.
I think so.
But they are...
We'll hear about it if you're not.
I'm sure I will. They have a really, what does she describe it as? A sort of apricot-y, kumquat-y, apple-y kind of a taste. And they were actually banned from import for a while, and people, aunties were getting busted, sneaking it in, doing, fruit transpo in order to make authentic ponche. So it's also got tamarind and guava and pineapple, and it's just all kind of cooked together. And bonus, after you are serving your hot juice, which is very red, and it has dried hibiscus flower, which is part of that redness. So if you enjoy the Jamaica when you go to the Raspado stand, this might be your jam. You can also eat the stewed hot fruit. It is spikeable, but Andrea told me that it's in fact so good, she has it without the hooch. A lot of people put rum and tequila in it, but it's kind of nice.
It takes all kinds.
It takes all kinds. I mean, and you might shift gears once Omicron shows up. But it's one of those things that you can make a giant batch of, and the kids can have it, the adults can have it, and everybody can kind of doctor it to how they want. Some people, I'm sure, came for the hot fruit. But then, the other great thing about it is that it's really, really substitutable. She has a really great list of a handful of places where you can get all of the ingredients this time of year in Eureka and Fortuna. And so some of these fruits that you might look at and be like, well, I haven't seen these in my local market. But if you hit these Latin markets, then you can find the ingredients this time of year. I just saw some of them at El Pueblo also. The other great thing about it is it's substitutable. So if you can't find this or that item, or if you just feel like, this would be great with some apricots, you can just do it, and you can play around, and different people, different households kind of have their own style, their own version. And whether you have never had it before, or if you have been relying on your mom to make it every year, it's time. It's time for all of us to make some ponche.
Nice. All right. Well, and there's a very detailed recipe there.
It's so detailed.
Very detailed.
And if you do go wrong, just add a little bit more rum.
Sage advice.
Yeah.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this week on North Coast Journal Preview. Dave will be back next week. You can find North Coast Journal online and on your newsstands right now. Thad, Jennifer, I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you again next week.
Likewise, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you.